Think back to some of the games you remember most fondly from when you were younger. You may think of some classics like Mario, The Legend of Zelda, or Sonic, or maybe something more modern like Halo or Undertale. But beyond the gameplay of platforming through Mario or shooting aliens in Halo, what you might find sticks with you the most is the soundtrack. Go look up your favorite game's soundtrack on YouTube and you'll find the memories come rushing back. Nintendo's Koji Kondo, Bungie's Marty O'Donnell, Toby Fox, and many others scored the soundtracks for many people's favorite childhood games. But sometimes forgotten in the conversation of soundtrack greats was the 90s gaming titan, Rare. Rare, a British game development company who were the kings of brilliant game design in their heyday. Making games since the 1980s, Rare made a few well-known series, from Wizards and Warriors, Snake Rattle and Roll, and Battletoads for the NES, to perhaps the greatest versus game of the golden age of gaming, GoldenEye. Rare could do no wrong. But the golden age of Rare started with the release of Donkey Kong Country.
Video game companies has revitalized a classic just in time to make it on Santa's list.
Launching worldwide in 1994, Donkey Kong Country absolutely shattered records on release. It set the record for the fastest selling video game at the time, selling 500,000 copies in the first week, before finally selling over 6 million copies in its first holiday season. Rare's success with Donkey Kong Country didn't stop there. With a 25% investment from Nintendo, they had the resources they needed to pave the way for maybe the greatest run of games developed by a single studio. In '95, they released Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3 in '96, Blast Corps, GoldenEye 007, and Diddy Kong Racing in '97, Banjo-Kazooie in '98, Jet Force Gemini and Donkey Kong 64 in '99, Perfect Dark and Banjo-Tooie in 2000, concluding their successful run with Conker's Bad Fur Day in 2001. In just 7 years, Rare managed to develop and release an impressive lineup of 12 genre-defining games, a mind-blowing achievement. The one thing that Rare truly understood that few other studios at the time realized was the critical role that sound plays in enhancing and immersing the player into the game. From the whimsical melodies that swept players away to magical worlds, to the meticulously crafted sound effects that brought environments to life, Rare's attention to audio detail elevated their creations to new heights. Some of the best examples come from perhaps the most divisive game Rare ever made, Donkey Kong 64. Whether you love it for its rich and expansive world woven together through interconnected environments, or hate it for its grindy and absolutely staggering number of collectibles, DK64 has arguably the best soundtrack out of all of Rare's library. The game sets the bar high early, with the greatest intro to a game of all time, the DK Rap. Here we go. And the rest of the soundtrack has no business going as hard as it does. Regarding Rare's sound design, it really was their secret sauce that subtly brought everything together. Did you enter a cave? The theme slows down, making you sit up and focus to think, hey, let's slow it down. There could be strong enemies around every corner. Take your time. The enclosed dankness of the cave is enhanced with a slight echo as well as some ambient dripping sounds. Each and every level has its own theme, complete with a set of instruments that just makes sense. It's not just DK64. Every game they made had a uniqueness to its overall style that differentiated them from each other. Whether it's Banjo-Kazooie's whimsical, fun, and silly nature, Donkey Kong Country's tropical, ambient jazz vibes, or Conker's Bad Fur Day's whatever this is. Seriously, how did this game get made?
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you.
You know how every game ever has a muted processing effect when you go underwater? Rare basically invented that, and was one of the first companies to add effects to slightly muffle the music to make it as if you were actually listening to it from beneath the surface. If you enter an area by day, it's happy and sunny, so we get an upbeat, jaunty tune with birds chirping and bees buzzing. If you enter the same area at night, it's become a spooky place, full of different enemy types. The tune is no longer optimistic and cheery, instead shifting to a minor key, becoming slower, more mysterious, and ominous. The birds and the bees have been replaced with owls hooting, crickets chirping, and wolves howling in the distance. It was certainly enough to give 8-year-old me chills and rush through the section every time it was nighttime. Speaking of chills, if you enter a frozen section of the world, the theme transforms, becoming slower and colder. You'll hear the music start to incorporate sound effects from the level itself, like howling winds and jingle bells. On Freeze Easy Peak, the song changes when you turn the Christmas tree on, so that it now evokes Christmas cheer. In Frantic Factory, you'll find yourself in a kid's playroom or toy factory. The unsettling C minor melody is broken up with a wind-up toy music box, and you'll hear machinery grinding, gears turning, and a clock ticking blended into the song to match the gameplay. The enemies vary from clockwork kremlings that wind themselves up and are very difficult to kill, to toys that you would find scattered at the bottom of a toy chest. It's quite possibly the best level in any Rare game. Also, how is it that the spooky level boss in Creepy Castle is silly and ridiculous, but the boss for Frantic Factory is straight up nightmare fuel? And then we send Tiny to beat it. Rare doesn't shy away from any combination of atmospheres. Whether it's the peculiar interior of a decaying cheese wedge in a whimsical cloud-filled world, or an alien ship at the bottom of the ocean, Rare has a theme for it. Their goal is to infuse each game with a rich atmosphere, ensuring that every nook, cranny, and corner feels distinct, vibrant, and above all, unforgettable. When you encounter these songs years down the line, they instantly transport you back to the exact moment when you first experienced that particular section of the game. Not only does each world have its own main theme that plays consistently, but there are also variations on those themes for when you explore different areas within the levels. Since the different areas have their own variations on each other, they can blend together so well that you don't even notice it happening. They work in harmony with the gameplay and visuals, enhancing the player's engagement and creating a kind of audio tapestry that draws us deeper into the game's world. It's insanely hard to make a track that's interesting, unique, and also listenable on loop for hours at a time without getting sick of it. Oh, and also compressed, and only a few minutes long, since there are big size limitations on the cartridges. But that's where Rare's composers come in. Rare's soundtracks are written by some of the most talented composers in the gaming industry. Names like David Wise, Grant Kirkhope, and Robin Beanland have become synonymous with Rare's signature musical style. These composers have had the unique pleasure of creating the soundtracks that wormed their way into 90s kids' brains. They each have a unique twist they put on games they write the score to, but ultimately they have the ability to craft some of the most intricate melodies that not only complement the gameplay, but get etched into our minds forever. Even though Rare isn't the development team they were in the Golden Age, their legacy still lives on. Throughout the years, various teams have left to make other companies that exemplify the classic cartoony fun that early Rare games had. The GoldenEye Perfect Dark team branched off to make Free Radical Design. If that name sounds familiar, it's because they made the Timesplitters series. They also released games as Crytek UK and Dambuster Studios, before re-establishing themselves as Free Radical Design once again to start working on an as of yet untitled Timesplitters game in 2021. Playtonic Games, known for Yooka-Laylee, are made up of former Rare members as well, and if Yooka-Laylee doesn't exemplify Rare's style, I don't know what will. They even managed to get David Wise and Grant Kirkhope to work on the soundtrack. In the 2000s, Rare was bought by Microsoft, ending their free reign on Nintendo consoles. But Rare is still making games. They've released a handful of games in the past 20 years, some to favorable reviews, and others, not so much. And then they released Sea of Thieves. Since Sea of Thieves was announced, it's been nominated for 25 awards and won some awards for the gameplay, the visual design, my god, look at that water, as well as their score. Rare really tried to dig back to their roots and make a fun, unique, and interesting game for people to play together. The cartoonish graphics and ridiculous gameplay options are definitely very on-brand for old-school Rare, and it's a ton of fun with the right group of people. Like, what other game can you shoot yourself out of a cannon as an actual strategy? or how you can weave musical instruments together to play a sea shanty only for someone to get drunk and play completely off-key while puking all over the other players. That's some of the quirky Rare Golden Age showing through. And they're currently working on Everwild, an action-adventure game with a cel-shaded art style, with reports that the style of game being more in line with the Viva Pinata games as opposed to a survival game they originally showed in trailers. We're optimistic that the old classic Rare style of music will live on. And in the end, everything comes back to nostalgia. Rare made their legacy off making great and interesting games with amazing soundtracks. We recently covered remakes of classic video games, and sometimes it's hard to go back and enjoy the game the same way you did as a kid, but what does stick with you is the deep-seated memories that a great game soundtrack can leave with you. Back in a time where you and your friends just played games for fun, a concept that sounds blasphemous nowadays, I know. The moment it starts, the music builds, the beat drops. You're transported back to being a child. You've got 2 pizzas on the way, a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper chilling in the fridge, your parents aren't home, and your friends are just showing up. Life is good. You're 34 years old. Even if you weren't around to play these classic games, we hope our video shared a little bit of how incredibly meaningful these games were to us during that era, permanently leaving their mark on both the video game industry and millions of kids around the world. Anyways, thanks for watching! If you like this video, let us know about some of your favorite nostalgic soundtracks in the comments below, and be sure to check out our other video on how remakes are taking over gaming, or subscribe for more videos like this in the future. See ya!